What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire catalog from their first film all the way to whenever I get current. And I'm excited to get back into this series. I just released the review for Trespass Against Us not too long ago, and this is one of my favorite series to work on because I'm a huge fan of A24. And I thought it would be fun to just go through and watch all of their films because there's a lot of movies early on in their catalog I'd never seen before, but there's also a lot of films early in their catalog that I really enjoyed a lot. And today's review is about a film I have seen multiple times. I want to say this is either the fourth or fifth time I've watched this movie. And when I talk about underrated horror films with people, this movie comes up a lot. I discuss this film quite often with people and recommend it a lot because I think it's really fantastic. And I was really looking forward to watching this. It hadn't been too long since I'd seen it recently, but I knew with how much I loved this movie initially that I was going to love it this time around, and I'm excited to tell you about it today. And the film I'm going to be discussing is The Blackcoat's Daughter. Blackcoat's Daughter is directed by Osgood Perkins. In the dead of winter, Kat and Rose, two very different girls, find themselves spending winter break at their prestigious prep school. What they don't know is that Kat is being stalked by an evil entity, and their lives are about to change forever. Meanwhile, Joan, a young troubled woman, makes her way across a frozen landscape towards the school. But why? So, as I said, I've seen this movie before multiple times, and I was excited to revisit it this time around, and I absolutely loved it again. I truly think this is one of the most underrated horror films of all time. I think when we get into the discussion of talking about what makes a good slow burn horror film, The Blackcoat's Daughter should be at the front of the discussion. This film is executed perfectly in building its atmosphere, building its suspense, great character building, enough ambiguity to where you can piece things together in your head, but enough of a cohesive story that it's going to be satisfying for people who don't necessarily want an open-ended film. And that's what I like about it, is the ending is a little open, but there's enough closure that I think people that don't often like movies that leave it up to your interpretation will get enough out of it to appreciate. And I'm excited to break it apart for you a little bit today. So as the plot description states, we are introduced to Kat, played by Kiernan Shipka, and Rose, played by Lucy Boynton. The two of them are at a prep school that is a religious prep school, and it's about to be winter break. Kiernan Shipka's character is expecting her parents to come pick her up. They don't seem like they're going to arrive on time, and so she realizes that she's probably going to have to stay at the school for break. Rose is also planning on staying at school for the break. And the two of them are living there during the winter break, and weird things start to happen with Kat's character, and Rose is trying to figure out what is up with her. She's seemingly acting strange. The two of them interact, but there's not necessarily a closeness between them. And Rose is also dealing with, she thinks that her boyfriend got her pregnant, and so she's dealing with that on top of being around this girl all the time. Well, then we cut to a completely different story where we're introduced to Emma Roberts' character, Joan, and she is out traveling, heading towards this school, and she's hitchhiking, and this couple picks her up and says, we are on the way to the school. We're going there to visit the town right around where the school is at. And for some reason, the guy picks her up and says, hey, I'll take you here. There's something about her that draws him into picking her up. And so we get these two stories side by side that at first don't seem to have any sort of connectivity other than the school being what's connecting the two of them. And throughout the film, information is disclosed to us as to why these characters all mean something to one another. And the film explores possession, it explores the occult. There's all these really interesting ideas that the film delves into. And like I said, I love this movie a lot. First off, building atmosphere. From the very first frame of this film, it's just unsettling and cold. Just even when you're introduced to the characters and not necessarily, anything scary has happened right out of the gate, but there's something off even about the way the characters interact with one another that makes it feel so strange and just kind of gets you set up for what you're in for the next hour and a half. And that's something I really appreciate about this movie a lot, is just the initial building of that atmosphere through the use of sound, through the use of the camera, through the cold cinematography. The color palette in this film is very dark and it's very cold, and I like that a lot. I feel like it puts you in the mood for this movie, and at first it might seem jarring to some people to jump back and forth to these stories, but I think Oz Perkins does a fantastic job of giving you information along the way to where you're like, why are these stories interconnected? Why are they playing out at the same time? And then I don't want to give too much away about the film, but you do get into this point where the idea of possession comes into play and contacting the devil. And what I think is really interesting comparatively to other films in the past that have explored possession and demonic possession and those types of things, this is so much less about, like, you know, through misfortune you've accidentally contacted the devil or something. This person does this because they're lonely. It's a really fascinating exploration of loneliness in human beings. There's a line towards the third act of the movie with the demonic entity, and I just think every time I watch the movie, it makes me think about how this person has gotten so lonely they don't feel like their parents are a part of their lives. They don't feel like anyone around them cares about them all that much, to where, like, demonic possession isn't the worst thing in the world because at least there's someone around. And I know that's like really dark and depressing, but that's the vibe that the film gives, is that someone is just so desperate to have something or someone in their lives that they would go this route of being possessed by a demon and doing these really horrific things, which the film is filled with horrific violence, some implied and some directly shown to you. And I think the combination of the two makes for a really impactful experience. I remember the first time I watched this movie, just some of the sounds that accompany some of the gruesome violence in this movie stuck in my brain for a really long time after I watched it. And this movie still, this time being the fourth or fifth time I've seen it, still was just right there in my brain. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and I was mesmerized the entire runtime of the film. And I think part of that is due to the amazing visual presentation in the score, and part of it is due to the phenomenal performances in this film. I think Kiernan Shipka does an incredible job at how subdued her performance is. She has dialogue in the film, but so much of her performance is through the quiet nuance of her facial expressions and the way that she interacts with other people. There's just a timidness there, and you almost feel bad for her character through most of the film, even when information about her is being revealed. I also think on the other end of the spectrum, you have Emma Roberts' character, who is very different in the way that she presents herself, but there's a lot that she has to do through facial expression and bodily movements in this film, and it's just really impressive what she pulls off in this film. And I think they accompany each other really well in this movie, and I just love the pacing of it, and I love the third act payoff. I think it is so brutal and in your face. It doesn't pull any punches. And if some of you out there don't know, Oz Perkins is the son of Anthony Perkins, known famously for Psycho, and it's really interesting to see him tackle horror, and he's worked on horror films since The Blackcoat's Daughter, and I think this film really shows his talent as a filmmaker. He gets a lot out of his actors. He gets a lot out of the cinematography and the atmosphere and just everything I'm looking for in this type of a horror movie. And if you've never seen The Blackcoat's Daughter before, I'd highly recommend it. It is fantastic. So have you seen The Blackcoat's Daughter? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was incredible. Every time I've watched it, I grow to enjoy it more. And I think if you've never seen it before, you 100% should. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.